If you ever found yourself going down a true crime rabbit hole at 2 a.m., these books are definitely going to ruin your sleep schedule. Whether it's a good thing because you're so captivated by the stories, or they could give you nightmares. One of these in particular literally kept me up because, well, we talk about one of my biggest fears. Welcome to my true crime book recommendations, friends. So I have 10 books to share with you. 6 of them I have read and 4 of them are at the tip top of my true crime TBR. I have read far more than 6 true crime books. These are just the 6 that really stuck with me. Some of these books are investigative style books, some of these books are truly heartbreaking, and some of them are just morbidly fascinating. So buckle up, buttercups, and grab you a piece of paper and a pen. You're gonna wanna write these down, okay? You're gonna wanna write these down because I feel like a lot of us I see these memes all the time where they say, man, I'm feeling very anxious. I need to relax. Let me turn this movie off, turn on a true crime documentary, and grab my snacks. That's me. Okay, so the first book on my list is the one that I recommend the most. If you read any book out of this entire video, let it be this one. Okay, this is the one that I recommend you pick up if you're only picking up one. You need to pick up the rest of them, but this is the one, okay? And this one is American Predator by Maureen Callahan. Let me just jump to the chase. This is so well done. She did a phenomenal job piecing this book together. It's well done. A lot of the times going into true crime books, I find that the authors tend to also talk about themselves a lot in the books. Not this one. This one we are focusing fully on the case. It's put together very well. You go over victims, you go over Israel Keyes himself, you go over, you know, what happened to him, things like that. It's phenomenal, okay? Israel Keyes. Let me tell you what, this is a very meticulous man, terrifying, organized. Let me just tell you what he did, okay? Years before this man even decided to go out there and unalive people, he thought it would be a fantastic idea to put together kill kits. And so he would get like these buckets and fill them with like weapons and supplies and stuff to do this, and then just drive across the country burying them in random spots. And then one day when he got this little itch to go out there and unalive someone, which he did just randomly, he didn't like plot any of that out, and he had his kill kits ready. And it goes into more details than that. I'm just telling you right now, this is the book that you're gonna wanna pick up first if you haven't already. Okay, this next book is one that I do believe the author weaves a lot of herself into the pages. However, it's for a reason. It's because this book is partially biography, but mostly true crime. But I say that because our author, she found herself working at a distress hotline center with one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Okay? I don't think ever in her life she was like, you know what? I'm gonna become friends with Ted freaking Bundy. Yeah, before people knew who he was, right? In this one, you get to see her, it's The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. You get to see her connect the dots and figure out all of this. She covers a lot of things. She goes through background. You get to see Ted Bundy in his childhood. You get to see him have his own little family with his girlfriend and stepdaughter. You get to see him be very vile and disturbing and disgusting. You get to be there when he's caught and caught again, and he even has a child like while he's in jail, which is, people are weird, truly. Anyway, this is a fantastic book. If you are at all curious to know about Ted Bundy, if you don't already know about Ted Bundy, this is definitely one to pick up. It is a thicken, but you get a lot of detail. Okay? Before reading this, all that I knew about Ted Bundy was about the Florida sorority murders, but there's a whole hell of a lot more to this man. A whole hell of a lot more. So, this is a good one to pick up. This next book, the author of this one was not a former police officer. She was not even a detective of any sorts. Well, except the armchair kind. She was a stay-at-home mom and had a blog and was a little bit obsessed with this case. And that is Michelle McNamara, and this is I'll Be Gone in the Dark. So Michelle spent many years investigating the Golden State Killer. He was accused of murdering 13 individuals and I believe over like 50 sexual assaults, like And it was cold for a long time. And that happened during the 70s and 80s. And she was very, very, very invested in figuring this out, to the point where she even became close friends with some people who actually worked in the field with investigating cold cases. So in this book, I feel like Michelle, her writing was very empathetic. She didn't sensationalize the violence. Instead, she focused on the victims and their stories and the mystery of this man and the many, many years that he, you know, got away with doing all of the damage that he did. Tragically though, Michelle wasn't able to finish this book or see this case actually being solved. It is solved now, but at the time of this book being published, it wasn't solved. I believe it was solved very shortly after this book was published. The book is finished. It was finished by Paul Haynes and Billy Jensen, and the killer obviously has been caught, but this is still even though it feels unfinished because, you know, the case was solved after the fact, it is still a fantastic book. This book kept me up at night. Like, literally, I had a really hard time sleeping after reading this book. Out of all of the books that I've read in my life, this one affected me the most. One, because of the home invasion talk in this book, because there's a lot of that. That's what this particular individual loved to do, and that is a really big fear of mine. I have a lot of fears, but that one is absolutely terrifying. Somebody invading your safe space, you know what I mean? It's just terrifying. Anytime anyone ever asks me, Beth, have you ever read any books that literally kept you up at night, like scared you so bad you couldn't sleep? This is the #1 book that has done that for me, followed by a fictional book called Stolen Tongues. But this one is terrifying, especially if, you know, home invasion is something that you are absolutely terrified of. Okay, we are switching gears a little bit because this one is completely different from the first 3, in the sense that this one follows 3 sisters that spent their life, most of their life, their childhood, trying to survive their monster of a mother. And that is If You Tell by Greg Olson. Shelley Notek is the mother's name, and she liked to come off very caring, wanted people to think she was this fantastic mother, this great friend, when in actuality she was a sadistic individual, an abuser. She's manipulative. She inflicted both physical and psychological torture to not only her kids, but other people that were very close to her. This is a very, very, very sad, heartbreaking book to dive into, especially if you are a mother or if you just have a heart at all. Greg Olson tells the story through the eyes of the survivors, aka the 3 sisters, which makes this book not only heartbreaking, but also very powerful. This is definitely one of those books that will stick with you for a very, very long time. When I finished reading this book, I remember feeling heartbroken, just baffled as to how an individual could be this way, especially to her own children, to anyone really, but especially to your own children or to elderly individuals. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And from my knowledge, I believe Shelley Notek is now out of prison. And if you've read this book, yeah, she should not be out of prison. These next 2 books are ones that I think are perfect for the morbidly curious individual. If you're just wanting to know facts about death, cremation, how someone gets into the business of death, i.e. working at a crematory or a funeral home or whatever, these are the books that you're going to want to pick up. Okay, a little light reading it's not light reading at all. Nay. Well, the first one is called Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? Big Questions from Tiny Mortals About Death. I actually listened to this one on audio, and this was, albeit it's about death, it was a fun read. And they had little kids write in to Caitlin Dowdy, that's the author, questions, and she responded as if she's talking to kids. Like this one said, if I died making a stupid face, would it be stuck like that forever? And so she then goes to explain, you know, like how the body acts whenever it's going through Postmortem, I don't know. Here's another one. Can we give grandma a Viking funeral? And she talks about funerals and things like that. There were so many things in here that I didn't know. Or like I've heard of. Smoke up your ass. You know that saying? Like, quit blowing smoke up my ass? Yeah, that's an actual thing. Where people actually did that. Back in the back day. And she talks about that. And it's so interesting. I definitely recommend this book. This next one is also by the same author, Caitlin Doughty. It's called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory. In this one, she talks about how she kind of got into the business of being a mortician. She worked, you know, at a funeral home. She worked at a cremation place. She talks about the process of cremation. She talks about how bodies are transported from the hospital to whatever. She talks about the weight of the ashes and what happens to like jewelry when it's it's just, she talks about a lot. And I am someone who is terrified of death. And there were some things in here that I wish I would have never learned. So I will say that if you are terrified of death, steer clear of this one. But if you are morbidly curious, she goes into a lot and she doesn't hold back. So she talks about the smell of decaying bodies. She talks about what happens if you have a stillborn at the hospital and they take the baby from the hospital and what they do with it. Like she goes in, like if you are literally super, super curious, tread lightly. If you're scared of death like me. She has a degree in medieval history, and right now she is in the process of writing a book about the Titanic, and I am very curious. Like, is she gonna talk about potentially how the body, I just know that I am very, very, very curious about that. But yes, she is definitely an author to check out if you're just very morbidly curious. So these next 4 books are books that I am going to be tacking on to my TBR. These are the books that I'm going to be diving in next when it comes to true crime. Now, I will say this, when it comes to true crime, I don't read it like back to back to back to back because a lot of it is super, super heavy content. And honestly, I have a heart, babe, and she is very sensitive. And a lot of the times, this stuff really can get to me. So I typically read a true crime book every few months. I am, you know, in the process of reading Helter Skelter. I am not going to be using that one as a recommendation as of right now. Maybe in the future if I finish it and I do think it is a good recommendation, but I'm not too far into it. But that one is over. It's like a bonus. I'm going to throw that in here. It's a little bonus book. It is probably the most popular Charles Manson true crime book. There is an opposing book that a lot of people told me to pick up if I liked Helter Skelter to pick up. I'll put that also on the screen. Pick up this other book because it's more true to the cases than Helter Skelter was. I don't know. There is a lot of back and forth in the true crime area, especially when it comes to people writing books like with bias, if that makes sense. I don't know. But anyway, so let's dive into number 7 on this list, but first on the TBR is a classic, and it's one that when I do like lists of TBR books over on like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, a lot of people are like, gasp, you didn't add this book to your list. I didn't add it to the list because I haven't read it yet. Okay, so that is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This one really set the stage for true crime books. Okay, this is the classic of the classics. This is the true crime book. Why haven't I read it yet? I don't really. It's because I lean heavily towards true crime books that center around serial killers. I don't know what it is. But it is what it is. So the case in this book takes place in 1959 in Kansas. It's at the home of the Clutter family. Some people break into their house and they break in with the intention of stealing money, okay? But what happens is they murder the family. Yep. So what makes this book so groundbreaking is Truman Capote's writing. It is said to be very cinematic. For those who have, they get bored with, nonfiction books or whatever, this one is supposed to read like a fiction book, but it's with a real case. In order for the author to reconstruct exactly what happened, he not only interviewed the people that were working the case, he also interviewed people in the town. He also interviewed the killers themselves. Bravo, because you don't really get that. Well, do you? I haven't read many books where you get actual interviews from the killers. I would assume this book leaves you feeling like have an eerie feeling to it, in the same sense. When I watched the movie The Strangers a long time ago, this movie really made a big impact on my life in the sense that it scared the shit out of me. Okay? It was about this couple. They go to this house and, 4 o'clock in the morning, people are knocking on the door and they just randomly decide to kill them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what this, like when I read the synopsis of this book, it automatically brought me back to The Strangers. And it's again the same thing with home invasion. Like, that's absolutely fucking terrifying. So it's probably also why I haven't picked it up just quite yet. Because if you've ever asked me, Beth, what movie terrified you the absolute most, it's The Strangers. That'll do it. Up next, we have The House of Evil by John Dean. Have you heard of Sylvia Lycan? She was a young girl. I believe it was her and her sister were sent to stay with her aunt, and her aunt's kids, and then other kids in the neighborhood tortured her to the point where she died. They tortured this poor girl, did some really crude, vile things to her. And I feel like this is going to be in the same vein of If You Tell by Greg Olson, in which it's going to be very heartbreaking. And I've just been prepping myself for this. Now, I have read a book that kind of covers this case, but I don't know if it's fully true crime. If it is, I think it's like fictionalized true crime. I don't even know. It is called The Girl Next Door. Let me look it up and see. Okay, so I read The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. It is fiction and it's loosely based on this crime. Okay, that was a very, very disturbing and hard book to get through. So I would imagine that this one by John Dean is going to be even more hard to get through. I don't know how descriptive it is. I don't know if it goes into all those details. I will know because I do plan on reading this book, but that's just another one that I'm adding to my list. I actually need to pick this one up. I do own a copy of the other books in this video, just not that one. Okay, the next one is called Nightstalker, but this isn't about Richard Ramirez, the Nightstalker that was here in America, nay. This one is about the Nightstalker that's over in the UK, okay? This man was named Delroy what? Let me look. Delroy Grant. And you know what he did? Let me tell you. He went for 2 whole decades in South London. He would burglarize people's homes. So he would break into their homes and also SA them. But not just your regular schmegular person, nay. He did it to the elderly. To 80-year-olds. To people's grandmothers. And a few years ago, I watched a YouTube video, like a true crime video, about this man. She was talking about how he would hold a bright light, like a bright flashlight, in their face while he did it so they couldn't see him. Someone's grandmother. Many grandmothers. So this book goes into detail on his life and how he kind of lived 2 separate lives, because he was married and he was known as this very kind, caring husband to his wife. And then he had a hobby, apparently. Let me just see the years that this took place in, because I don't know. Delroy Grant alive? Question mark. Between October 1992 and May of 2009 in the southeast London area of England. Wow. Preying primarily on elderly women who lived alone. He suspected over 100 offenses from 1990 to 2009. He is still alive, and he is currently in the HM prison, Belmarsh. That's insane. That's insane. Okay? So I just, you know, I feel like, okay. Anyway, okay, let's get to the last book on the list. So this one's a little bit different. Okay, it's a little bit different because this one is about Jack the Ripper. It is called Portrait of a Killer by Patricia Cornwell, who is a fiction writer. She writes, I read one book by her called Postmortem. The K. Scarpetta series is what she's really known for, but this one, I believe she uses her skills, investigative skills, if you will, to write a book about Jack the Ripper. Now, I know absolutely nothing about Jack the Ripper. I feel like a lot of people don't know much about Jack the Ripper because people have their suspicions about who he is. A lot of people will say that the case is really closed. But like I don't think there's a definite person. Some people will say like, oh, it's the same man as H.H. Holmes, or oh, it's this person, oh, it's that person. Like, so many people have their theories. And in this book, this is Patricia Cornwell's theory of who she thinks it is. And she uses her knowledge of investigation and forensic stuff to tell you about it, essentially. So it says her central theory is that Jack the Ripper was actually the British painter Walter Stickert, a well-known artist in London at the time. I think this is like the Victorian time. It says Cornwell spent years and reportedly millions of her own money tracking down his paintings, letters, and even old envelopes to test for DNA traces and handwriting comparisons. Imagine being in that field of work. Imagine having the time and money to do something like that. That's why I want to read the books. I'm just like, this bitch, she seems dedicated, and I want to see what she's got to say. Okay? And then maybe it will open up the door to Jack the Ripper for me, in the sense that I can actually know more detail about, because I feel like I've read a fictional book once about a woman who like goes back in time and happens to be at the same time as Jack the Ripper. I think I DNF'd that, actually. I've seen like a TV show where they talk about it. I don't, you know what I mean? So I'm very interested, and I'm very interested to see how she does this. Is Patricia Cornwell educated? Like, is she an actual forensic scientist? I don't know. Again, I only really know of her through her K. Scarpetta series. I'm assuming she's had to do research to learn to write about the forensics of stuff but it says that she even tests DNA and handwriting comparisons. It says the book is part true crime, part historical investigation, and part forensic analysis. She walks readers through the Ripper's crimes, the evidence that survived, and why she believes Stickert fits the psychological and behavioral profile of the killer. What's interesting is that the book sparked a ton of controversy when it came out. Many Ripperologists, I didn't even know that was a thing, disagreed with her conclusions. But regardless of whether you buy her theory, it's fascinating to see how she re-examines a Victorian case through the lens of modern forensics and criminal profiling. Like I said, with true crime, a lot of people disagree with books and such. Like like a lot of people will say, if you tell by Greg Olson doesn't tell the right story. A lot of people will tell you that Helter Skelter doesn't tell the right story. Apparently people say this doesn't, you know, a girl is still curious, and I'm still gonna read it, so I'm gonna read it. I already I got the book on my shelf too, so I should get to it soon. And just going over that with you, it really like made me want to pick that book up. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. But anyway, those are the 10 true crime books that either I recommend to you or sound so good I'm like is it called secondhand recommendation? What is it called when you haven't read the book but you hear good things and so you still want to recommend it to people? You know what I mean? That's what I'm doing. So I hope you at least got one recommendation. And let me know if you want to become a Ripperologist and read it with me, because that just sounds so cool. Okay, I am done here. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye! Did you see that? I have a schedule now. Every Wednesday you'll see me here.